Andrew, CEOs across the world have been in virtual boardrooms over the weekend freaking out. They have learned there is power in numbers. Even if individual investors can't short stocks, they can get together and they can come for you. Does this change the way they do business?
I don't think so much that the freak out is happening at the company level so much as it's happening within the professional investor community class level, who are saying, can we short companies anymore? Does that even work? There's now a new risk out there that was never part of the analysis. If we can't short, what does that mean? How does that change the economics of the business? Can you hedge anymore? So I think this is a total rethink. It's also a rethink about valuations, how people value things at all. Is this a short-term issue? Are we going to be seeing this over and over and over again? Can it continue over and over again? Are there enough people out there? Does the social media army enabled by social media, can they continue this? I think there's so many questions, so few answers, and that's why it has so many people scratching their heads, in some cases rooting for the little guy, but also, I think, as you've pointed out, worried about the little guy as well, because in every good protest, it always gets co-opted by the looters and the opportunists, and you can be sure that the looters and opportunists are there right now.
Scott, do you see this as a moment in time or a true disruption to the industry, like the way we saw the media industry get disrupted over the last 10 years? Is that now happening to finance, or is that not possible given how complicated finance is?
I think the methods and the mediums are different here, but I think we're just playing out an age-old construct of old men using a cause, whether it's God or get these weapons of mass destruction out of here or stick it to the man, and having young people attack the castle so they can get wealthier. You know who's going to create, whose wealth has increased the most over the last week? The Newhouse family, the people who own Reddit, Tiger Global, Ribbit and Sequoia Capital, the people that own Robinhood, Goldman Sachs, who's going to take them public, the Winklevoss twins, who today decided that silver is a movement, so a couple billionaires who rode crew at Harvard are now supposedly inciting a riot. So, yeah, stick it to the man. But I think people in this have to be careful that, are you really sticking it to the man, or is the man using you as their stick? I think this will update people's attempt to create a narrative. The Redditors haven't done anything that hedge funds haven't done in the past, but their mediums are now Reddit and Twitter as opposed to investor relations conferences or Barron's. But I just see this as we're just playing out the same old model. A bunch of people who already have a position saying, take the castle. And what I would say to your fellow brothers next to you in the castle, now what? And be clear, movements cost money. Give $100 to Black Lives Matter or give $100 to Bernie Sanders, fine, you're going to lose it. Dopamine, gambling costs money. But be clear, if you think that this is investing, be careful. You might be the stick. You're not sticking it to the man.
Andrew, what do you think about that? Because right now we're hearing from a lot of individual investors saying, don't tell me how to live. Don't tell me what to do. It's my money and I'm prepared to lose it. But I think back to 2008, when so many unsuspecting people got themselves involved in subprime mortgages. And yes, they signed on for it. That was that home that they bought. They signed for that mortgage. But then they lost their homes because they really didn't understand how complex things were. Could we face that again? And if we do, have a lot of people in pain and blaming others?
Well, this has turned the whole idea of investor protection on its head in many ways. I think you said it exactly right, Steph. And the question is, who is protecting who? Are you protecting the small investor, or are you protecting the hedge fund and the big the establishment? And
by the way, we don't know who's on what side, right? We have to keep reminding everyone it wasn't the little guys going against a hedge fund. Scott just laid it out.
Well, that's the thing. And this is the thing that concerns me about this whole thing is there are some very sophisticated retail investors out there that have pulled this off. But in order to do it, they invariably had to induce others who may be less sophisticated by default, given the kinds of numbers you're seeing. so many of these people say, I don't care if I lose money. I'm trying to make a point here. And I imagine there are some that do believe that. But there are a lot of people who've been told this is going to be a $500 stock. This is going to be a $1,000 stock. This is going to go to the moon. And the question is whether they fully understand that at some point, the stock is going to go back down. You can't, no, everybody can't sell all at one time. It doesn't work that way. It's impossible. And so it's almost inevitable. And that, I think, is going to be the concerning part. And then the question is, does the speculator blame themselves? And I would say that that never happens.
Scott, this is my worry. Over the weekend, I had all sorts of individual investors saying to me, don't rain on my parade. AMC movies, it is going to the moon. We're going to go back to the movies. I get it. I understand the nostalgia of wanting buttered popcorn. But when it comes to investing stocks, it's about capital structure and cash flows. Before AMC goes to the moon, they got $6 billion worth of debt outstanding, and that's going up. And these individuals don't understand that necessarily, not all of them. Are you worried about all of these, let's say, young guys who over the last year were home, uninspired, in front of screens, maybe not being able to go to work, go out, have their normal social lives, and this was their connection? What happens when that connection's lost? I'm talking about mental health here.
So, Stephanie, you and Andrew have been in and around the markets for 2 decades, myself for 3 decades. The arc of the market is jagged and irrational, but it typically bends towards reattaching to the fundamentals. At some point, this stock will reattach to the fundamentals, and the fundamentals put this much lower. And I think I coach a lot of young men, and I ask them we go through an exercise. When I meet with them, I look at their phone tracker, and I find out where they're spending time. And I would ask every young man to decide, maybe you're learning here, maybe it's fun, fine, maybe it's a movement. But be prepared to lose 80 to 90% of it. And if it's still worth it, then have at it. But the biggest loss of capital here will be the human capital of young men who are sitting and staring at their phone and watching the price of Bitcoin or the price of AMC. And ask yourself, would you be better off taking that 1, 2, or 3 hours a day and working out, trying to form relationships with mentors, with romantic relationships, with people at work, getting great at something so you can be the person on the other side of the trade? The greatest loss in capital here is from young men who are more prone to gambling addiction, who don't understand the markets. I think we are setting ourselves up similar to how there's a ton of young women out there who became very depressed by sitting in their rooms looking at Instagram. Self-cutting and self-harm skyrocket. I think you are going to see an explosion in young male depression, and I think a lot of it is going to be reverse engineered to apps that convince you you're part of a movement or physically addict you to your phone. Ask yourself, would your time staring at Robinhood be better spent somewhere else? That is the real capital destruction that is taking place here.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.